Don't you guys try to double-cross me. Welcome, my friends, to another episode of the Top 10 Favorite, and from what I believe are the best performances by some of the greatest actors in all of cinema. Who do you think you're dealing with, a fall guy? A patsy? I'm starting from 10 and then boxing my way up to number 1. And make no mistake about it, my friends, I have seen every film that is attainable of these artists. Keyword, attainable. So every list on here comes from truthful, fearful, and utterly passionate accuracy. Today, my friends, I am massively excited to talk about one of the most underrated actors in the history of cinema and theater. If you're a classic film lover, you have definitely seen him before, and after today, I hope, truly, you will never ever forget him and the power of his performances in film. His name is Robert Ryan. Born in Sweet Home, Chicago, Robert certainly didn't have the easiest of upbringings in the early 1900s, as you can imagine, for his little brother John passed away when he was only a baby. On top of a political scandal of embezzlement his father and uncle were involved in. Doing his best to not join his father's family construction business, the Ryan Company, he studied as hard as he could, with academics not necessarily being the easiest for him. By the time he studied drama, though, Bob Ryan said Hamlet changed his life and opened him up to a whole new world of dramatic arts, with reading more Shakespeare, Shaw, and of course, Eugene O'Neill. He went to Dartmouth, where he actually held a heavyweight title in boxing in his first 2 years. And after working one manual labor job after another, he finally summoned up the courage to pursue the art of acting when he was only 28 years old. He moved to LA, where he studied with Max Reinhardt, a famous pioneer of modern theater who helped shape the magnitude of Robert Ryan through movement. It makes total sense because being a boxer, you can easily navigate yourself through voice and movement in performing arts beautifully. Progressing from stage, he slowly made his way to the picture business, but with World War II raging on, he signed up for the Marines, serving until the war ended, but it wouldn't be long until he would catch the eye of Hollywood execs and audiences everywhere. Now, I have a confession to make, my friends. Robert Ryan is one of my dear favorite actors of all time. I know I've said that a lot on my channel, but Robert Ryan certainly means a whole lot more to me, more than you would expect. The man had a wide reputation in Hollywood, always playing the heavy, as you will see when we talk about the list here. But one thing that has always been clear in every villain he's played, they all have a sense of empathy. They all had a reason why they were the way they were, which made them poetically three-dimensional. And that has always been acting 101 and a commitment for myself when I first got started in the business, and of course to this day. Every time that suave and handsome devil came on screen, you just couldn't take your freaking eyes off him. You could just feel something uneasy was going to happen, which always made a real exciting picture. I'll be a broken record and repeat myself. Yes, this is a top 10 that was extremely difficult because he was always consistently phenomenal in every role he played. Not just villains, he played romantic hero leads as well. But rules are rules, my friends, and I don't want him to throw me a left and knock me out of the ring, because he could really do that, What I also love about this man is that he always retained a love and hunger for the theater, starring in fantastic productions of Murder in the Cathedral, the delightful musical Mr. President, A Kiss for Cinderella, The Front Page, not to mention his Shakespeare work in Coriolanus, directed by John Houseman, as well as Antony and Cleopatra with Katharine Hepburn. The man has a body of work that is second to none, that has heavily inspired not just me, but the great Martin Scorsese, as he names Robert Ryan himself as one of the greatest actors in the history of American film. So get them dukes up, my buddy, as we spar about these top 10 best performances of the underrated and brilliant actor that is Robert Ryan. Starting off at number 10, we have Billy Budd, an utterly masterful film adaptation of Herman Melville's classic story, with Robert Ryan garnering top billing as Claggart, a brutally vicious and truly evil master of arms who sees the divinity in the eyes of the young sailor Billy, played beautifully by Oscar nominee in his screen debut, Terrence Stamp. This film, honestly, guys, was the first film I remember seeing and distinctly noticing Robert Ryan ever. And how could you not? I remember being a young 12-year-old when I first saw this film and being just floored with how evil Claggart was and just how joyous Ryan seemed to be playing him when he's whipping his sailors. Oh God, you can see the little glow and twinkle in his eye. Ryan was so overjoyed to take this role too, even if by this time of 1962, he was really tired of playing the villain. But he grew up with and loved Melville's work, so there was nothing better than to play a significant role in this story, since he was overlooked for the role of Captain Ahab in John Huston's adaptation of Moby Dick, which, oh God, he would have been fantastic. He kept himself a far distance from Terrence Stamp because he knew it would increase the intensity of their chemistry on screen, which definitely helped. For his powerful portrayal, Ryan was finally honored with a BAFTA nomination for Best Foreign Actor, which he wholeheartedly deserved. And to this day, many look at this film adaptation as a masterpiece of literary adaptations, mainly due to the driving conflict from Ryan. Number 9, The Naked Spur. Yeah, have I mentioned in previous videos how much I love this Western? Oh, I have? Great, well, here we go again, because I can't talk enough about this film, thanks to its Academy Award-nominated screenplay, but most of all, the fantastic performances from Jimmy Stewart, Janet Leigh, Ralph Meeker, Millard Mitchell, and of course, Robert Ryan as the bounty of Stewart, Ben Vandergroat, who gets caught pretty early on in the picture. But that's not the point. The point is how this murderer, Ben, will win by turning everyone against each other. He's extremely cunning and charmingly intelligent that you honestly feel he's going to escape successfully, while all the other bounty hunters start challenging each other, including his muse, played wonderfully by Janet Leigh. Just with his influence, money splits better 2 ways than it does with 3. It makes sense how he can sway them based on the every man for himself mindset at these times of the aftermath of the Civil War. It's personified as Ryan shares with Stewart, choosing a way to die? What's the difference? Choosing a way to live? That's the hard part. Every time Ryan is on screen, he is unbelievably magnetic. Even though I truly do not like his wardrobe. My God. That's really my only reservation. As Empire Magazine says, it is a true masterpiece of a Western, thanks to Ryan giving it that brutal realism. It's clear to see why Robert Ryan claimed his Ben Vandergroat was one of his favorite roles. Number 8, On Dangerous Ground, the classic snowy film noir helmed by one of the most underrated directors ever, Nicholas Ray, starring Ryan in one of the great leading roles of his time. He plays tough-as-nails detective Jim Wilson, who's sick of his beat in the big city, and he's taken out his anger and frustration and broken dreams on his suspects. A true and more brutal Popeye Doyle before French Connection even came around. So his captain instructs him on one final mission before he turns in his badge, which brings him up to the snowy countryside to solve a child murder case, and he, of course, meets Mary, played exquisitely by Ida Lupino, and must come to face the harsh truth about Mary's slight involvement with the murderer. As discussed on the video on Ida Lupino, which you can find right here, thank you very much, this is certainly a dark and cold film noir with such heart. What really sells it are the performances, of course. Ryan is a force of nature as Wilson, giving such raw viscera to Wilson in his urgency to get the job done, and resentment for what the big city beat has turned him into. And because Wilson is played by Ryan, we can see the simple and soft side of him once he changes locations, and we can see he's destined for something better. The film was not quite a success when it premiered, but has since gained a notable cult following among film noir fans. And when you have a beautiful ending that was improvised by both Lupino and Ryan to give the film its well-deserved heartwarming finish, along with Bernard Herrmann's gorgeous score, you're in film noir heaven, baby. Number 7, Clash by Night. The Fritz Lang melodramatic film noir classic with Robert Ryan returning as the somewhat heavy in this, taunting Barbara Stanwyck's emotions with love. We just talked about Barbara Stanwyck's phenomenal performance in the last video, on Barbara Stanwyck of course, but let's not forget the electric force that is Ryan as Earl Pfeiffer, the married movie projectionist best friend of Jerry, played amazingly by Paul Douglas, and he starts to have the eye for May Doyle, even when she and Jerry get married, because at the end of the day, she's just like Earl, a dash of Tabasco, or the meat tastes flat. Robert Ryan actually revisits this story here after originating the role of Joe Doyle, May's brother, on Broadway with Tallulah Bankhead. He got the boost to play Earl for this film adaptation, and again, every character he plays, he makes it look so effortless. Here he really portrays a garbage can of a human being, but at the same time, so damn cool and charming. May says, "You're crude, Earl. He never claimed to polish. He's there to exist, to give us a reason to keep our blood pumping, even if it's bad blood." I will say the scene where Jerry asks Earl to do a quote-unquote Chinaman impression, and Robert does that horribly offensive impression, God, it makes your skin crawl. Even Barbara was like, what? And obviously that was the point of Earl, which I give all the props in the world to Robert for not judging his character and giving him flesh and blood as any character deserves. So let's drink to him, even if his heart is in the wrong place. Number 6, The Wild Bunch. Sam Peckinpah's famous Western, which we all know. It's all about the director's cut, right? This wild masterpiece of a Western, the new beginning of nostalgic Western lore with excessive violence, features Ryan as the heart and soul of this piece, playing Thornton, an outlaw who gets a chance of freedom if he gets to hunt down his old friend William Holden, along with Ernest Borgnine, Edmund O'Brien, Warren Oates, etc., and secure the bounty. Robert Ryan has said he never really cared for Westerns, and this one was quite possibly the worst. Worst experience, I might add. What, are you kidding? Problems working with Peckinpah? You're talking kid stuff. Crazy stuff. Without a doubt, Peckinpah had a reputation of badgering and berating actors. And it got to a point where Ryan almost punched him out. All the while they were filming in La Loma, Mexico, in 1968, Ryan read about the assassination of MLK, and then Robert Kennedy. So he was desperate to get back home for a few days to see his family, on top of campaigning for Eugene McCarthy to take the Democrat seat against LBJ. Peckinpah refused to give him time off and made him stay in costume and makeup, but never rolled film on his scenes during those days Ryan requested off. Wouldn't you be pissed? Ryan apparently grabbed Peckinpah by the shirt collar and said, "I'll do anything you ask me to do in front of the camera because I'm a professional. But you open your mouth to me off the set, I'll knock your teeth in." Applause, applause. Ryan was never a man to show frustration like that. But when you have a mission and a goal to make the world a better place and are refused that pursuit, man, you are driven to anything. Kind of like living in the Old West. And here, Ryan seems completely simpatico with his character Thornton. Both were outsiders, searching for the adventure of life. There is nothing that beats that beautiful ending, no spoilers, where Thornton is looking at the dead remains and that small little smile, recollecting what all this hunting was for and what the future would bring. It's such a beautifully understated performance which elevates the heart and soul of this masterpiece. Number 5, Bad Day at Blackrock. I sincerely wish this was much higher because Robert Ryan is just a vicious, horrendous, yet philosophical badass in this picture, trying to take down Spencer Tracy, the newcomer to Blackrock, John McCready, who arrives in the haunted, desolate ghost town to look for Komoko, a Japanese farmer, but he knows for sure there is something wrong with the townspeople, and we'll come to find out what they're truly hiding. Oscar-nominated director John Sturges delivers a fiery masterpiece of a film noir. Yes, it most certainly is a shiny cinemascope film noir, capturing all the mystery and depth of identity on top of taking place after the war. And what does our fellow man do when we come back from the brutal battles? Robert Ryan, as Reno Smith, the leader of his ragtag group of bigots, his power and ability to say so much by saying nothing at all, just reacting, is an actor's dream. Every scene, no matter where he is in the background, you see him listening. He is ever so present. It's just as present in the classic scene between he and Tracy outside the gas station, where he delivers such a brutal truth in his eyes. Look, McCready, there's a law against shooting dogs in this county, but when I see a mad dog, I don't wait for him to bite me. In context of Japanese farmer Komoko, that whole scene, Tracy has got his head down because Tracy knew the audience would always be looking at him because he's Spencer Tracy. However, Robert Ryan steals the show by just being so truthful. Even Tracy was so affected by Ryan's performance that he asked Milton Kaufman, the screenwriter of the piece, "Are you scared of Bob?" Milton said, "No, I've known him for years." Tracy said, "Well, he scares the hell out of me." Ryan sure as hell knew how to bring the heat. Number 4, Odds Against Tomorrow. Such a phenomenal film and regarded by many film buffs as the last classic film noir of the golden age, directed by the great master storyteller himself, Robert Wise, with the 2 phenomenal artists, Harry Belafonte, oh, rest in peace, amazing sir, and Robert Ryan, both hired for a robbery, but both of them are extremely racist. Ryan, much more so. So they are forced to work together, despite their major differences. But the real question is, will the job be pulled off before they even kill each other? The film is so damn great. One of the most captivating narrative statements on racism I've ever seen, with Harry and Robert giving truly incredible performances as Ingram and Slater, respectively. Ryan actually turned it down initially because he knew he was falling in that typecast department of bad guys. But once he really read the script, he saw the elements of what made it significant, how it states its message without preaching it, that his character Slater's bigotry is based in fear and envy, and that's the basis of what keeps the bigots operating, to be better than another man. And because Ryan understood where these guys were coming from, he brought a lot of pathos to Slater, understanding why he was the way he was. Between his relationship with his wife, played by Shelley Winters, and the bar scene where he's challenged by Wayne Rogers to punch him in the stomach, thinking he's a tough guy, until he sees how he can truly hurt a man. The chemistry between he and Belafonte is just masterful, and what's so beautiful, of course, is how Belafonte and Ryan were such great friends in real life, both loving and respecting each other's commitment to causes and fighting for civil rights together. The ending, oh man, it's so powerful. And it hits you right square in the face, which really, again, is not preachy. And I value the depth that Robert Ryan was always willing to go for this kind of role, to fight against prejudice by attacking it square on. Number 3, the setup. It's always the top 3 that are the most difficult because, my friends, Robert Ryan's towering performance as Bill Stoker Thompson is one of the most powerful and tragic portrayals of a broken fighter wanting salvation ever on film. Based on the beautiful poem by Joseph Montague March. It's hard to stomach at first because Stoker, in the poem, is known as Jones, and he's a black middleweight boxer. And the production didn't have a high box office black star at this point, so they cast Ryan and changed the name to Stoker because Ryan loved the story ever since he first read it when he was in school, actually. It should absolutely be remade now, without a doubt, with its original basis and intent from the poem. Hollywood, this is a classic that can actually be remade, and it would work. Not remaking masterpieces like Vertigo, for crying out loud. What the Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation altogether. But this film is indeed a masterpiece on its own. With Ryan stepping into the role of Stoker is genius, based on Ryan's own boxing experience and how Ryan can say 1,000 things with just his eyes. He nails Stoker left to right. His dialogue is very, very minimal, and Ryan loved this because it propelled him to guide us through Stoker's drama with his eyes and body language. Oh, the final fight is amazing, thanks to director Robert Wise for setting up 3 cameras to capture it in all of its gritty glory. The unbelievably gripping silent sequence of Ryan being hunted down by the goons as he's caught up by the metal roll-up door is shocking and terrifying. The film was vastly snubbed at the Oscars, with another boxing triumph, Champion, starring Kirk Douglas, nabbing major nominations, including Best Actor for Douglas. But we all know Ryan should have been absolutely nominated for Best Actor for this performance. But the film and performance had garnered a phenomenal reputation, being a primary source for Scorsese's Raging Bull. And of course, Robert Ryan would claim his performance as Stoker being his ultimate favorite. Number 2, Crossfire, the amazingly underrated film noir starring the 3 Roberts, Mitchum, Young, and Ryan. With Ryan, holy bejesus, stealing the show, and sadly, his only Academy Award nominated performance for Best Supporting Actor. Here he plays Montgomery, or Monty, rather, an army soldier who is questioned on the murder of Joseph Samuels, who just happens to be Jewish. Spoiler alert! However, I mean, come on, is it really a spoiler? Robert Ryan slowly reveals himself as the guilty party and does everything he can to stay out of the cops' radar. They can't pin anything on me. Based on Richard Brooks' novel The Brick Foxhole, this adaptation had to be played down since its original theme is on homosexuality versus anti-Semitism. Due to the code, of course, they changed that. But you know what? Anti-Semitism was indeed a more powerful subject at this time of 1947. Audiences would be more receptive with that theme at that time, for sure. Bob had actually read the book while he was serving and sought after the role of Montgomery to Brooks if it ever came to film. When asked why he wanted to play Monty, Bob said, "Because I know that son of a bitch. No one knows him better than I do. Dreams do come true, don't they?" And a dream came true for us, seeing Robert Ryan give so much depth to the character of Monty. Monty is smart, prejudiced, conniving, utterly patriotic, and very sensitive to the peril his country is going through. And Bob just nails it right from his first entrance when he's being questioned and seeing the dead body of Samuels. Remember, by this point, Ryan had only played bland leading and supporting male characters. Not his fault, but once he showed the world the brutality and honesty he could convey with detestable characters like Monty, his star power changed overnight. Without Ryan, this classic film noir doesn't work. And because of Ryan, this remains a huge source of inspiration for me and for countless storytellers. All right, you damn crooks, here are some honorable mentions. The Professionals. This is just one of the best damn westerns in cinema, period, with Robert Ryan rounding out a phenomenal cast with Lee Marvin, Burt Lancaster, and the man, Woody Strode, as they are the professionals, hired by a ruthless tycoon, Ralph Bellamy, to go rescue his Mexican wife, the unbelievably gorgeous Claudia Cardinale, who has been taken by Raza, the Mexican outlaw, played really well, actually, by Jack Palance, the most unlikely Mexican you can find. Those were still the days of Hollywood, folks. This is one of the greatest times you'll ever have, with Robert Ryan just perfectly cast as the sensitive horse wrestler, doing what he does best with the horses. But of course, manages to kick some major ass, which qualifies him as an ultimate professional. God's Little Acre. Oh my lord. One interesting little picture, if I do say so myself. Based on the best-selling novel, here you have Ryan playing Tai Walden, a wily old coot of a patriarch who commits himself and his family to dig for gold, which has to be buried somewhere under their farm, since it had been planted by their great-grandfather. And he counts on God to guide him through the acre to find it, all the while his voluptuous daughter, played by newcomer Tina Louise, is having some sexual frenzy on her mind. Jeez, what a shocking precursor to Gilligan's Island, Ginger. But I will say, those hot and heavy scenes between she and Aldo Ray are extremely sexy. Re-teaming with director Anthony Mann, Ryan gives such a great blend of wildcat comedy with beautiful moments of poignant drama. Even Ryan would later claim this was one of his best works. Men in War. One of the greatest and I should say underrated war films ever. Certainly one of the greatest and grittiest films about the Korean War specifically. Ryan and Aldo Ray re-team here first before God's Little Acre, and with Anthony Mann again directing. This war picture gives us everything we love, seeing men just living through the constant drudgery of battle, how soldiers think, and what's to happen when you're left behind enemy lines in a wasteland. Based on the novel Combat, with a beautiful score by Elmer Bernstein, Ryan again gives simple, effective realism by just being present and always listening. The original script was much longer, but Anthony Mann knew you needed amazing actors like Ryan to carry the story forward with just his eyes and movement. Inferno, a fun picture that tackled the latest craze at the time, 3D! Don't we all love 3D? Being released the same year as House of Wax and It Came from Outer Space, which both had 3D treatments, 20th Century Fox thought they'd up their game with 3D, with this shiny Technicolor film noir. With Ryan as Donald Whitley Carson III, stranded, left for dead by his wife, played by Rhonda Fleming, with a broken leg so she can run off with her lover, played by William Lundigan. But this is the ultimate survival story. And yes, this too is such a great film noir, even when it's nice and shiny, because here we have Ryan giving us everything through movement and his eyes in this grotesque Mojave Desert. Will he make it alive, you may ask? Well, you'd have to put on your 3D glasses and see lamps flying at you. The 3D gimmicks they try in this picture work pretty well for the time, I must say. And once again, Ryan just elevates the quality of this picture based on his nature to ground his characters. Ryan years later would also claim his performance as Carson here would be one of his best works as well. Caught. A brilliantly done mysterious love story, all based on second chances, with Robert Ryan doing his very best Howard Hughes. Literally, since the film was inspired by treacherous events between Howard Hughes and its amazing director, Max Ophuls. It's a simple story with our protagonist played by Barbara Bel Geddes, marrying a suave and charming millionaire, Smith Ulrich, played by Ryan. But he shows his true colors with his violent and super sensitive tendencies, which inspires her to leave, finally, and then falls for James Mason. But will any good turn out from this? Probably not, but you'll have to see. Ryan again, riding high on his villainous image in film, gives Smith such charm and vulnerability that becomes really easy why Barbara is attracted to him. And the reveal on his volatile behavior is just extraordinary to watch, with how he banks a cue ball across the table in that slimy stance, or how he erupts on the table after she's gone missing, takes a drink, and basically crawls his way to make a phone call. It's voice and movement work at its finest. It's captivating, not to mention when he refuses to give her a divorce, locks the door, and begins to play pinball as she's screaming after him at the door. Martin Scorsese specifically paints his performance in this film as one of the underrated love stories, which helped propel the concept of The Aviator, which I absolutely love. Case in point, We wouldn't have the amazing and naturally gripping work we have today if it weren't for Robert Ryan. Number 1, The Iceman Cometh. Yes, my friends, with all the brilliant portrayals and performances within Ryan's career, the number 1 for me has to go back to the theater. Not always, but when you watch Ryan give his heart and soul to Larry Slade, a drunken ex-anarchist who sits at Harry Hope's saloon, just waiting for what is before him, the comforting fact that death is a long, fine sleep. You are washed away in the sea of whiskey-soaked melancholy that makes me break down every time. Ryan was ultimately prepared for a moment such as this to play Larry, since he had been inspired by the works of O'Neill ever since he was a young man, and after he'd just finished playing the great James Tyrone Sr. in O'Neill's Long Day's Journey into Night on Broadway. He was ready. In my eyes, and the simple truth is, there is not an actor that has played the role of Larry Slade more effectively, with more soul, more heart, more depth than Ryan, as he antagonizes the cheerful yet guilty spirit of Hickey, played greatly by fourth-time co-star Lee Marvin. Director John Frankenheimer delivers a powerful film adaptation with little tricks and pizzazz because it's not that kind of picture, and he wanted to shoot with multiple cameras to really showcase this as a play, which makes sense since this was produced by the American Film Theater and was basically a precursor to what we have today with Fathom Events, where it was bringing live theater back in the movie theaters. With 2 intermissions, of course. You can never get enough Ryan here, especially when you see him just simply reacting and listening. How you feel every breath as you feel he is one step away from dying, which in actuality, he was really dying of lung cancer at this time. His wife, Jessica, died not too long ago of cancer before filming started here, so he felt the end of the rope was coming very, very soon. But that still did not stop him from inspiring thousands with his performance, including and especially his co-star, a young Jeff Bridges as Don Parrott, who experienced a real awakening to continue acting. Bridges was ready to give up acting and become a musician, but while working with Ryan, he could feel the power of storytelling and noticed how, before a take, Ryan's hands were so full of sweat. And he was bewildered on why Ryan was so nervous. Ryan, an amazing actor with such great star power, who's had all this experience. And when he asked him about it, Ryan said, "If I wasn't nervous, I'd be real nervous." Which goes to show no matter how much experience you've had, no matter how many characters you have played in the history of Hollywood and in theater, you are still so focused on bringing justice to the piece, bringing justice to your character. And there's nothing more invigorating than that. And Bridges was so inspired that he continued to bring classic characters to the screen to this day, like the greatest, the Dude. Ryan received wonderful praise and accolades for his performance, as he should have, but he sadly passed away before he could even see the final product. However, his performance as Larry Slade lives on as one of the greatest, and it should be agreed upon when a reporter showed up on set one day and interviewed Ryan. And Ryan said, "This is one I'll want to be remembered for." But all of his performances are so memorable. More importantly than all of his film and theater work, you must remember he was one of the biggest influences and warriors in activism I've ever seen, donating so much of his efforts and time to such causes like the ACLU, the NAACP, United World Federalists, the American Friends Service Committee, fighting against the HUAC McCarthy hearings, doing everything he could for the civil rights, being the president and co-founding chair of the Committee for a SANE nuclear policy. Not to mention, in 1951, he and Jessica, his wife, were inspired to start their own school called the Oakwood School, which was focusing on what they called modified progression. Modified since the term progressive was associated with communism at that time. I know, crazy. In actuality, it really operated as a Montessori school as we know it today, integrating all races and creeds as well. I've just always appreciated how much he kept his life so simply private. As he stated, an actor's private life should be very private. The public should see nothing but what they see on the screen. But how could you hide the beautiful fact of how much he loved and adored his beautiful wife and children, which kept him so private? Once shooting was done, he hardly went out unless he was fighting for a cause. Sure, not every film was a hit. They all can't be winners, can they? But always remember, Robert Ryan was always the winner, giving it his all, fulfilling that piece of expressionism that he had deep inside him, telling stories of men with beautiful simplistic stillness that men revered and idolized. I like how film critic Paul Zimmerman said it when he said, Robert Ryan left behind a lifetime of roles too small for his talent. And yes, he was capable of so much more that Hollywood never gave him the chance to do. But honestly, the man was a giant, a magnetic, electric giant of class, raw energy, seduction, power, and poetry. And I hold him high in my heart and soul as not just one of my favorite actors of all time, but one of my heroes. End of the fight, my friends, but tell me, do you agree with my picks? What are your favorite performances by this class act of a man, this epic, legendary fighter of an artist? Please share in the comments below, my friends. I just love hearing what you all share and what you all think. It's super important. If you like this, please click like, subscribe, and all that jazz. Don't forget to check out the Patreon page. Please support since you'll get access to more content. And as always, my friends, thank you all so much for watching. Now, I can't believe I'll be quoting Earl Pfeiffer on this, but it's quite nice. I do love it and agree with it myself when he said, "If you have a dream, live it. If you have a hope, chase it."